So technically this is not Jeep related, but this should be pretty interesting. I'll tell the full story at the end, but I've had this Dodge Durango since, well, 2016. I've had it 8 years, and I've used it in my junkyard up and down for a solid 8 years. Air conditioner worked, everything worked perfect. I think a wheel bearing finally went down so bad that it wouldn't even pull. I had to pull it to the shop and fix that. Maybe one CV axle. I don't know, just, you know, minor maintenance. I think I changed oil in it one time, but I used the thing forever, never had any trouble out of it. I put crappy gas in it because I didn't care. It was just a junkyard rig. And then one day the fuel pump decided that it was just time to go and crappy gas. But I was like, after this long, I think it's probably due a little bit of everything. So I just showed it to the side. Kid hit me up needing, well, person hit me up needing a transmission for a V8. It's like, well, here, I got this one. I preached and preached. I was like, this transmission's good, because I was afraid he's going to put it in there, kink the cooler lines, not flush the cooler out, you know, just improper install. So I kept on stressing. I was like, man, this transmission's good. I said, literally, I could pull hundreds of witnesses that have rode in this thing up and down. So it goes on. I sell it, and it's actually, I would say, a reputable mechanic shop that's actually semi-related to me. They's putting it in, and which I was proud of that. And they called me, said this transmission don't have part. I was like, okay. Didn't really think twice about it, and then they's like, you don't do anything. It's like, well, that makes no sense. It's like, literally when it come in the shop, it had part because it would have rolled down the hill when I moved it with a SkyTrack. So didn't think twice about it. I was like, something simple. So go up there, and in my mind, and I'll teach this later, this was a Durango going in a Dodge truck. Turns out it didn't work, but it turns out it wasn't going to work, but it did work, but it didn't work. So in the back of my mind, Cherokees I've run into, they make different spline sizes for the output right here. So if you put a 23 spline transfer case on a 21 spline, this is Cherokee's data, but if you put one of them on there, it'll just simply won't touch nothing. So we made the mistake as kids is put a bigger one on a small spline, bolted everything up, got it together, nothing. Put in gear, wouldn't change anything. Like, what the heck? So we sit there and we was like, see if it's got part. So we put it in part, pushed it. It's like, well, the only thing we changed was transfer case in the Cherokee. And I was like, well, it has to be something in the transfer case. So we found that out. So I've stuck with that for years. So that's where, as soon as this happened, same scenario, I was like, well, the Durango, being a 1500 light duty, must have smaller splines than the Dodge pickups, being a heavier duty truck. So I brought the transfer case up there, told him, I was like, just change it out and see if that fixes it, because, well, that's too confusing. I tried it, wiggled, it had some slack, but so I left them the Dodge Durango transfer case. I already knew it'd work. I had one side by side. So I was like, just put that in there, put it in there, same thing. I was like, in my mind, I was just going crazy. I was like, you imagine having a vehicle for 8 years, drive it pretty much every single day, probably more than any daily vehicle I got, because that's what I use to go to my junkyard every day, multiple times. Never ever once had a minute's trouble. I think I learned to park it downhill because this seal was bad. Yeah, it's actually broke. Look at there, it wasn't lying. It was that hard. So I learned to park it downhill and it wouldn't leak fluid out of here. But occasionally I added fluid, zero maintenance, never had trouble. So as confident as you could be, and then this happens. I was like, what in the world? So I stressed over it. Finally I was like, you know, I want to know personally for my own benefit. I said, rather than stress over this, I went and got another one, got that took care of. And I was like, I want this transmission back. So I got it back, and oh, that's part of the story I left out. It doesn't have park at all, which park is literally right here on the part that comes out mechanical. There's, in my mind, there's nothing that could go wrong. So that's that. That's what I'm confused about there. And then he did have to change this little shifter linkage here from the Durango style to the Dodge pickup style. But we kept noticing if you do park, reverse, neutral, drive, third, and then second, first, there's like 5 or 6 clicks. I was like, so I was 1, 2, 3 and a half. What in the world? So tried and it won't go to park, and you can still sit here and spin it. Park should be all the way back. Nothing. So I'm not a transmission expert, but I feel like I can figure that out. If not, I'm dying to know. I may pop this off and be something so stupid I delete this video, but if I don't turn the camera on, y'all would never be here. So I guess let's take it apart. And another thing, I did think whatever mechanism's in here rocks across this part neutral switch. He changed it out for this being a 98 to whatever years, but changed it out. I thought, well, maybe it's touching something. So I took it out, same thing. So I'm gonna pop the cover off and see. Maybe it's something simple, maybe something fell loose. I don't know. It's just weird how it could just go bad that quick. Let's see the junkyard mud. This is after I washed it like lots of times. I hope it's something so simple that we can just laugh about it. This will be a 4-minute video and a lesson learned. But I'm not allowed to preach religion. But I was hoping maybe this happened for a reason, and maybe this is destined to go in a Jeep or a Jeep build or something like that. This seems a very odd situation to happen like that. Moment of truth. A lot of fluid left. Been draining this thing forever. So it's got a little bit of metal on the magnet. That's gonna be normal in a used transmission. Gasket looks pretty good. Let me get a drain. Well, how, I don't know, but I think I found it. Simple as it gets. Give me one moment. I used to not wear gloves at all. I kind of thought it's senseless, but the older you get, it just seems to be easier. Wait, you don't go in smelling like transmission fluid. That's bad. Alright, as simple as it can get. That's what I said. I don't know. Guess I'll just post the video like it is. So I did say he had to change this shifter fork out. Well, if you look right there, get some more light. Well, I guess I could have just rolled the transmission over. There's nothing metal. Maybe that'll work. So he did have to change this out, which means he had to pull up on it. Now how excessively he pulled up on it, that I cannot figure out. But if you look right there, that little dog leg looking part is supposed to be in between there. So this explains everything. It needs to be in there to pull this plunger, and that selects the gears in there. That's why it never come out of what it thought was park. And that's why I can't go down any farther, because it's hitting right there. So literally, let's see, I need to push that over. I'm trying to think what would be easiest. Alright, this transmission is probably going to stay with me for life, so let's just pop it on there. So maybe y'all can tell what's going on. I can't see in the little bitty screen there. I got you zoomed in, but let's see. We can just, I hate to do it this way. There it goes. Ta-da! So now we got park, and now that it's plunging, we should have all our gears. Hot dog. That's incredible. I don't know how that happened. Never had it happen to me, but that's what that was down the entire time. So the valve body thinks it's in park, so it's not going to swap any gears. And then it didn't have room to go down to go to park. Crazy, crazy. Alright, give me a second. Learn something new every day, don't you? Just FYI, if you're ever this deep into a transmission, this sensor right here, solenoid, whatever you want to call it, if you look at the top portion up there, that's all metal dust that's collected. So that's how it makes gears. So if that's stopped up right there, it just affects everything. So just cleaning that while I'm here. And here when I'm putting a pan on, I'm going to tell you the story real quick. So before I started telling this story, I was sitting here just trying to brainstorm to make sure that it was okay to tell. And I was sitting there thinking about it, and I got to thinking, I was like, what if it was just a made-up story and it was a complete lie? At this point, I don't care. I probably won't put. I was going to include a picture of the Durango, but I guess I won't. So I buy junk cars and all this kind of stuff. Well, the guy hit me up. He said he had this Durango, and I do a few Durangos because they're kind of interchangeable with Chrysler, like Jeeps and stuff like that. So he hit me up, told me what it was. I was like, "It run and drive?" He's like, "Yeah." Price to me like $400, $375 maybe, honestly. And he drove it from town to my shop, pulled up, left it running, cold air. I mean, it was junk, don't get me wrong, but 5.2, I mean, four-wheel drive, had decent mud tires. And said something, I was like, "You got a title?" He's like, "Well, that's the story." He said, the guy that owns it was running from the law and pulled up to his buddy's house to park, camp out for the night, and while he was inside asleep, the, what do you call it, not the law, bounty hunter, whatever, he got arrested. So now the Durango's sitting in the dude's yard, buddy's yard, and he asked the cops, he's like, "What'd I do with the Durango?" And they said, "Sell it." I said, "Well, what about the title?" And cops sit there and told him, is like, "Well, he's going to jail for essentially life, so I don't think he's going to get out and be worried about this Durango." So he sold it to this guy, we sold it to me, we sold it. Oh yeah, which I ended up with. So at this point, if you know the story and it's yours and you own it and whatever, you can come get it. It's done for. I done used it all up, but I just thought that's a funny story. Anyways, that obviously fixed that transmission. Don't know if you technically learned a whole lot from it. I was expecting a more dramatic story, but this is stuff I was doing in the first place. Didn't stage it, didn't make it up. It just is what it is. Appreciate you watching, and have a good day.